The end of winter in Minnesota still carried a biting chill. In the quiet residential area of Eden Prairie, puddles from melting snow sparkled quietly in the moonlight of the Wilson family's yard. With few cars passing by on the street, the neighborhood waited peacefully for spring's arrival. Jennifer Wilson tied the last ribbon on the bouquet in her hands. She needed to finish the flower arrangements for Sunday's church service. Gently lifting the completed bouquet, she smiled, her blue eyes crinkling as her warm brown hair swayed slightly. The sign for Jen's Flowers gleamed outside this small shop, which had built a solid reputation over its 5 years in business, handling wedding and church flower arrangements. Located near Eden Prairie Center, it caught the eye of shoppers, and the seasonal flowers in the display window added color to the street. At the daycare, Adrian ran towards her with open arms. His light brown hair and big blue eyes reminded her so much of herself as a child. Clutching his red T-Rex plushie in one hand, he enthusiastically launched into his daily dinosaur stories. The daycare teacher smiled fondly at his endless fascination with dinosaurs. "I drew a Stegosaurus today. The teacher said it was really good. And I made a Tyrannosaurus nest with blocks too. My, that's wonderful. Show me when we get home. What did you have for snack today?" "Chocolate chip cookies. But I saved half for Michael Papa." His recent switch to calling his stepfather Papa was a natural change that made Jennifer breathe a quiet sigh of relief. When they arrived home, Michael was still at work. Her husband, who worked as a project manager at an IT company, sometimes came home late but always made it back before dinner. 1 year into their marriage, he showed fatherly love to Adrian as his stepfather. On weekends, they would go to the zoo as a family, sometimes spending hours at the dinosaur exhibits. "I'm home. Oh, something smells good." When Michael returned, the aroma of chicken soup wafted from the kitchen. As the family of 3 began dinner, Adrian rapidly reported the day's events at daycare. When he tried to bring his dinosaur book to the table and was gently scolded, he showed a dissatisfied expression but quickly smiled again when Michael joked, "It's bedtime for the dinosaurs too." Bedtime stories always featured dinosaurs. While reading Triceratops' Adventure, Adrian fell asleep earlier than usual. A star-shaped night light cast a warm glow across the room. When Jennifer returned to her room, she found a message from her ex-husband on her smartphone. "Is the usual time okay for this weekend's visit?" James, who worked as a real estate agent, never missed his twice-monthly visits despite his busy schedule, maintaining a cooperative relationship for Adrian's sake even after the divorce. What concerned her lately was James's new wife, Carol. With her perfect makeup and long black hair, she appeared gentle on the surface, but there was something unstable about her. Recently, she had been visiting the flower shop frequently, always talking about Adrian. Last week, Jennifer heard at the daycare that Carol had bought an expensive dinosaur figure. There were also rumors about her unsuccessful fertility treatments. But such worries felt distant now. Jennifer placed her phone on the table and lay down in bed. Believing another happy day would begin tomorrow, she closed her eyes. The phone's ring shattered the midnight silence. Jennifer reached for her bedside phone with clouded consciousness. Outside, cold rain beat against the windows, and occasional strong winds made the house creak. Michael breathed steadily beside her. The digital clock showed 2 a.m. An unknown number displayed on the screen. Usually, she would ignore it, but midnight calls carried an inexplicable anxiety. The streetlight usually visible from the bedroom window was hazy tonight due to the rain. Feeling her fingertips trembling, Jennifer pressed the answer button. "Hello. Mama, it's me, help me." She caught her breath. It was unmistakably Adrian's voice. But something seemed wrong. She could hear what sounded like a car engine in the background. Mixed with the rain, she thought she heard someone speaking softly. "Adrian. What's wrong? Where are you?" "Mama. I'm scared." After his trembling voice cut off, the call ended. Had someone hung up, or had they gone out of range? She immediately tried calling back, but only got a mechanical voice saying, "This number is currently not in service." Another attempt yielded nothing but an empty dial tone. Jennifer sat up abruptly. The bedroom air suddenly felt cold. Her son should be sleeping upstairs. Why would he have a phone at this hour? And from an unknown number. "Michael. Wake up. Please, wake up." When she desperately shook her husband's shoulder, Michael woke up. Even though he usually slept deeply, he responded immediately to his wife's tone. "What's wrong?" "A call from Adrian, something's wrong." From an unknown number, but it was definitely his voice. He said, "Help me." Before she finished speaking, Michael jumped up. They hurried into the hallway. Their footsteps up the stairs seemed louder than usual. The wooden floor made ominous sounds. The family photos on the wall looked like strangers' memories. Jennifer touched the doorknob with trembling hands. Her heart was pounding. She had to open it. But she didn't want to. Such contradictory emotions washed over her. In her head, the voice from the phone call kept repeating. The door opened. The room was dark. But they immediately noticed something was wrong. The dinosaur wallpaper that usually brought comfort now cast eerie shadows. The curtains were swaying violently. The window was wide open, letting in cold wind and rain. Puddles had formed on the floor. Raindrops glistened between scattered toys. Dinosaur figures lay scattered like silent witnesses. "Adrian." The bed was empty, its sheets disheveled. The red T-Rex plushie that he always slept with lay fallen by the pillow. The warm feeling of when she had handed it to him last night with a "good night" now felt like a distant memory. He's gone. Adrian is gone. In a panic, Jennifer searched the entire room. The closet, under the bed, under the desk. The usual hiding spots for hide and seek were now only sources of fear. He wasn't anywhere. "I'm calling 911." Michael shouted while pulling out his phone. Through the window, did someone come in? But why a second-floor window? Just then, they began to hear sirens in the distance. Was it coincidence, or had someone already called? The sound gradually grew closer. But to Jennifer's ears, it seemed to come from the ends of the earth. She collapsed to her knees while clutching the red T-Rex plushie. She could still feel her son's body warmth in it. The moonlight reflected in the wet floor wavered and distorted. Why? She could hear Michael talking to the 911 operator in the distance. Yes, a 4-year-old boy. Brown hair, blue eyes, last seen at bedtime around 8 p.m. The police sirens were getting closer. But her head was filled with just one voice. Mama, it's me, help me. That voice froze her heart. That voice was unmistakably Adrian's. The room's air grew even colder. Outside, the rain intensified, and raindrops blew in through the open window. The sound of rain hitting the floor echoed like the ticking of time. Marking the broken daily life, the irretrievable reality. And suddenly, the doorbell rang. The police had arrived. Mrs. Wilson. 2 uniformed officers stood at the entrance with flashlights. Their light illuminated the dark house. It felt unreal. Like a scene from a movie. But this wasn't a nightmare movie. Her son was gone. Someone had taken him. And that someone was a person who could either imitate Adrian's voice or make Adrian say things. Jennifer's mind flashed to that perfect makeup and long black hair. The recent unnatural behavior, the excessive interest in Adrian. But surely not. It couldn't be. She didn't want to believe it. Sirens echoed through the quiet residential streets of Eden Prairie. Like an announcement that the peaceful daily life would never return. Could you tell us again about the phone call in detail? Among the police officers gathered in the living room, a thin middle-aged man who introduced himself as Detective Johnson asked Jennifer in a quiet voice. Outside was still dark, and though the rain had lightened, the tension in the house showed no signs of easing. At 2 a.m., a call from an unknown number. Jennifer began speaking with a trembling voice. Michael placed his hand on her shoulder, gently supporting her. The police had already sent a forensics team upstairs to investigate Adrian's room. How long did the call last? 15 seconds, no, maybe 20 seconds. I heard what sounded like a car engine in the background. Just then, a forensics officer came downstairs. Detective Johnson, we found ladder marks outside the window. It appears someone used a ladder. The detective's expression tightened. Mrs. Wilson, your ladder. It's stored in the shed. The forensics officer immediately went to check the shed. A few minutes later, he returned shaking his head. The ladder was in its place. The kidnapper must have brought their own ladder. Evidence suggesting a premeditated crime was piling up one after another. At 5 a.m., they began canvassing the neighborhood. Uniformed officers went door to door along the dark streets. However, no residents had noticed any suspicious sounds or cars amid the night's rain. Mrs. Wilson, could we have a recent photo of your son? As she handed over the photo, yesterday's events raced through Jennifer's mind like a film strip. picking him up from daycare. His smile at dinner. Reading bedtime stories. Everything had been such a normal, happy daily routine. As morning arrived, reporters began gathering in front of the house. Local TV and radio station vans arrived one after another. The Eden Prairie Police Department PIO began preparing for the first press conference. Jennifer stared blankly at her son's smiling face being broadcast on TV as camera flashes went off. At 9 a.m., a Child Protective Services representative arrived. The young female social worker began asking questions in a gentle tone. Have you noticed any recent changes in your child's behavior? Are there any issues in your family relationships? Each question made her feel like she was being blamed. But Jennifer told herself this was standard procedure. New reports came in from the police. Fingerprints collected from Adrian's bedroom window were being compared with their database. Meanwhile, investigators tracking suspicious call records had determined that the problematic phone number came from a disposable cell phone. Mrs. Wilson, Detective Johnson approached again. We've contacted your ex-husband and his wife. They say they're heading here now. At those words, Jennifer felt her heart stop for a moment. Carol. She was coming. The recent unnatural behavior flashed back like a flashback. But should she voice her suspicions? Without any solid evidence. Near noon, Adrian's father James arrived with his wife Carol. How could this happen? James was visibly distraught, firing questions at the police officers one after another. Beside him, Carol stood expressionless, wearing black sunglasses. What time did you go to bed last night? The detective asked Carol. Around 11 p.m. At our home in Minneapolis. Together? Yes, of course. Just then, Jennifer's cell phone rang. From an unknown number. The room's air froze. As police officers prepared to record, she nervously answered the phone. Hello. But the other end was wrapped in silence. She could faintly hear what sounded like someone breathing. Adrian. At that moment, the call ended. The police technical team immediately began tracing the call's origin. Behind Carol's sunglasses, Jennifer thought she saw something move. We've received a report from an employee at Mirror Hills Supermarket. They've taken custody of a crying boy in the parking lot. At Detective Johnson's words, all eyes in the room focused on him. That location was near Carol's parents' home in Duluth. We're checking the security camera footage. A boy who was let out of a black SUV. As his words trailed off, Carol stood up. I need to use the restroom. As she tried to leave the room, an officer quietly blocked her path. Mrs. Carter, could we talk a bit more? The color drained from Carol's face. A bead of sweat rolled down from the edge of her sunglasses. A police technician pointed to a laptop screen. A black SUV parked in a dark parking lot. A woman getting out of the driver's seat, opening the back door. Even in the dim footage, that long black hair was unmistakable. Mrs. Carter, could you explain this footage? Carol remained silent, removing her sunglasses with slightly trembling hands. Her bloodshot eyes stared at the floor, unable to meet anyone's gaze. I didn't hurt Adrian. I just wanted to see him. Just then, James, who had been giving a statement in another room, burst in. Carol, what happened? In front of her confused husband, Carol's defenses began to crumble completely. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Crying, she pulled something out onto the desk. It was a smartphone. I made the phone call. Adrian's voice. I used a recording. Tension ran through the investigation headquarters. Her confession had begun. Investigation revealed that Carol had been secretly recording Adrian's voice for the past 3 months. When visiting the flower shop, during visitations. And she had edited those recordings to create that midnight phone call. After the fertility treatments failed, they said I couldn't have children anymore. Carol's voice trembled. Adrian could have been my son. Further investigation revealed shocking facts one after another. Carol's social media was filled with photos portraying her as Adrian's real mother. She had been weaving a false family narrative. Her Instagram had over 200 posts tagged, "My precious son," in the past 6 months. Mrs. Carter, you were seeing a psychiatrist, weren't you? At the detective's words, Carol slowly nodded. Schizophrenia medication was found in her bag. The prescription was dated 2 months ago. However, the medication showed no signs of ever being taken. Why didn't I notice? James covered his face with both hands. The fact that he, the husband closest to Carol, hadn't noticed her changes would likely continue to haunt him deeply. At 3 p.m., word came from Duluth police. A search warrant had been issued for Carol's parents' house. In the basement, they found Adrian's personal items one after another. Daycare drawings. Used paper cups. And most shocking was the existence of a space that perfectly recreated Adrian's bedroom. The same dinosaur wallpaper. The same bed cover. Even the toys were all identical. It was a premeditated preparation, wasn't it? At Detective Johnson's quiet words, the room fell into heavy silence. That abnormal obsession was clear to everyone's eyes. But why now? Jennifer asked with a trembling voice. The answer was in Carol's smartphone. She had received the results of her final fertility treatment the day before the incident. The doctor's message saying, "Pregnancy is no longer possible," had triggered everything. Excessive attachment to Adrian. Failed fertility treatments. Untreated schizophrenia. These factors had intertwined to create this distorted plan. "Please let me see Adrian," Carol pleaded tearfully. But the police officers quietly shook their heads. "Mrs. Carter, you're under arrest for the kidnapping of a minor." At 4 p.m., in the car heading to Mirror Hills supermarket where Adrian was being held, Jennifer caught her breath. Why the supermarket? The reason had become clear. According to Carol's confession, Adrian had complained of hunger. However, hesitating to take him to her parents' house, she decided to let him out in the supermarket parking lot. Perhaps at the last moment, her conscience had worked. "Michael, I should have noticed then," Jennifer murmured from the passenger seat. How Carol's visits to the flower shop increased, how her interest in Adrian was abnormal. "No one could have predicted this," Michael answered while driving. "What matters is what comes next." As they approached the parking lot, Jennifer's heartbeat quickened. She could see ambulance lights. And beside them, a small figure. Adrian. Hearing his mother's voice, the boy turned around, his face breaking into a relieved smile. "Mama." Jennifer couldn't stop crying as she embraced her running son. Adrian looked tired but showed no signs of serious injury. Though his red T-Rex plushie was missing, he seemed energetic. While being examined by paramedics, Adrian began speaking in fragments. "Aunt Carol came through the window, said she had new toys." Within his childlike innocent words lay traces of a planned abduction. Adrian had been lured out the window by the promise of new toys, his pure child's heart trusting adults. The paramedic who finished the examination approached Jennifer. "There are no physical issues. However, he may need care for psychological trauma." Jennifer nodded while embracing her son tightly once more. Michael joined them, and the family of three shared a long embrace. Just then, the sky suddenly brightened. The thick rain clouds parted, and the sun peeked through for the first time in a while. As if awakening from a long nightmare. In the police vehicle, Carol was quietly crying. James's expression as he watched her mixed anger, sadness, and sympathy. "Ma'am," Detective Johnson approached. "We'll need to take a formal statement and file a victim report." Interrupting those words, Adrian suddenly asked a question. "Mama, why is Aunt Carol crying?" No one could immediately answer his innocent question. Jennifer gently stroked her son's hair, carefully choosing her words. "Aunt Carol needs to take a rest for a while. But you haven't done anything wrong." The spring sunlight fell warmly on mother and child. Adrian started talking again. About dinosaurs. The normal, ordinary, irreplaceable daily life was slowly beginning to return. "Good morning, Adrian." Minnesota's morning sun streamed into the kitchen. 6 months after the incident, in September, the street trees were beginning to change color, announcing autumn's arrival. "Good morning, Mama. Today's the dinosaur field trip, right?" Adrian's eyes sparkled as he gripped his cereal spoon with both hands. The daycare had organized a special trip to the Science Museum of Minnesota's exhibition, World of Dinosaurs. Since that day, Adrian had been visiting a child psychologist once a week. "Children recover from trauma faster than adults," the counselor had said. However, he still sometimes had nightmares in the middle of the night. "Michael Papa, are you coming home early today?" "Yes, I promised." "It's a special day," Michael answered while drinking his coffee. Today was also the day Carol's sentence would be handed down. After the incident, the facts revealed by the investigation were more serious than expected. Carol had shown early symptoms of schizophrenia 2 years ago but hadn't received proper treatment. The failure of fertility treatments and the resulting psychological stress had contributed to worsening her symptoms. Before sentencing, expert psychiatric evaluation was conducted. As a result, Carol was determined to have committed the crime in a state of diminished capacity. The prosecution was seeking mandatory treatment at a specialized medical facility rather than prison time. "Jen, are you okay?" Michael asked worriedly. "Yes. I was just thinking. If we had noticed Carol's changes back then." At that moment, Adrian grabbed his mother's hand. "Mama, don't cry." A child's kindness brought tears to her eyes. Indeed, everyone had regrets. James continued to blame himself for not noticing his wife's changes. The local community also reflected on whether there had been any signs. However, along with Adrian's recovery, people were beginning to look forward. Jen's Flowers had also reopened after a temporary closure. Regular customers offered kind words. PTA mothers took turns helping at the shop. The church community delivered home-cooked meals. "Oh my, look at the time!" Jennifer exclaimed, glancing at the wall clock. "Adrian, we need to hurry." While fixing her son's hair, she glanced at the entrance. The green lamp of the newly installed home security system blinked quietly. Since that day, security awareness had increased in the neighborhood. Twice as many residents now attended the regular neighborhood watch meetings. "We're off." Adrian bounded out, clutching his new red T-Rex plushie. Though the previous one never returned, Michael had found the same kind. Arriving at daycare, the teacher greeted them warmly. They too had been watching over Adrian's changes. "Mrs. Wilson, we heard about today's sentencing. Please take care." In the car heading to the courthouse, memories of the spring incident flashed by like a film strip. The midnight phone call. The open window. And the reunion in the supermarket parking lot. The courtroom was filled with those involved. James was there too. He was proceeding with divorce from Carol. "All rise." The courtroom fell silent as the judge entered. Defendant Carol Carter. After careful deliberation, the court pronounces the following sentence. Carol stood with her eyes downcast. Gone was her once perfect makeup and well-groomed black hair. Taking into account the defendant's diminished responsibility due to mental impairment, the court sentences her to 3 years of mandatory treatment in a medical prison. After the sentencing, Carol turned toward Jennifer for the first time. "I'm sorry." Those words carried sincere remorse. Outside, the autumn sunlight was bright. "It's finally over," Jennifer sighed deeply. In the afternoon, when she went to pick up her son at the Science Museum, Adrian came running up with sparkling eyes. "Mama." The Tyrannosaurus bones were life-sized. Her son's innocent smile warmed her heart. In the evening, stopping by the flower shop, ordered bouquets were lined up. Arrangements for weddings and hospitals. And one small bouquet. It was to be delivered to the medical facility where Carol would be confined. "I wonder if this is right," Jennifer hesitated but added a card. "Wishing for your recovery." Returning home, Michael had started preparing dinner. A new dinosaur drawing by Adrian decorated the table. "Hey, why don't we eat in the garden tonight?" Michael suggested. "It's been a while since we've watched the stars." The early autumn breeze was pleasant, and the family's laughter around the garden table echoed through the quiet residential area. Adrian, with his new T-Rex on his lap, started talking about dinosaurs again. His voice seemed to announce that a new normal had returned to this house and to the town, along with certain hope. The smartphone on the table lit up. A message from the hospital. Regarding Adrian's next counseling session. Looking at the screen, Jennifer was thinking. The wounds hadn't completely healed yet. But maybe that was natural. What mattered was moving forward, one step at a time. In the sky, autumn constellations began to shine. And this family's story too was beginning to turn to a new page.